he looked like a moron at that stage, or he looked utterly cruel and heartless. You decide.
Merson seeked me out and apologised immediately.
I think it's more LeBron's problem than Bronnie's problem, because as a father, you would want to open those doors up for your son.
I find the parallels really interesting between Ineos and the Labour government, and they ain't going well.
We're back for another edition of the Whisper It Loudly pod. There's no shortage of subjects to discuss. I'm Darren Lewis, Troy Townsend, Jordan Jarrett-Bryan and Hugh Woozencroft are here, and it's great to have you here with us. Let's get into Manchester United. On our WhatsApp group on Monday, Hugh was fuming at the interview with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. So many areas where he shot himself in the foot. So rather than go around the room, Hugh, the floor is yours.
Well, I took some notes while I was watching.
Let me get a cup of tea.
The interviews last night, because I didn't want to forget anything that Sir Jim Ratcliffe had said. So if you didn't see the interview as yet, or you haven't, like me, sat through the 45-minute interview with Gary Neville, the interview with Dan Rowan at the BBC as well, let me just give you a quick synopsis.
He also did an interview with the newspapers as well, Hugh. He did three separate sit-downs.
Let's not forget the newspapers, but let me just say I haven't read those yet, hence why I'm just going off, letting you know that these are off the TV interviews that were given. One thing that struck me significantly in both interviews were the number of times that Sir Jim Ratcliffe mentioned media criticism and scrutiny, how much he underestimated it. He mentioned the fact that he was 72 years old and doesn't really need people shouting things at him or saying things to him when he's in and around Manchester. I felt for him a little bit in that moment, but, you know, he took this project on, and, you know, there are going to be some negatives that come with it. Hopefully he's not being abused. None of us, I think, would be in favor of that. But it did strike me that he did these interviews simply because he doesn't want to look like the bad guy when it comes to taking lunches away and concessionary tickets away, when it comes to making people redundant. I think he feels like he's being made the enemy of the peace, and he doesn't want to look like that. That's the first major thing that struck me. He called himself a fan of Manchester United. He also called himself a fan of Chelsea when he was trying to buy that football club, so God knows. He also said it was too difficult to extract Erik ten Hag's performance as manager from the negative, in his view, structure around him. And so he gave Erik ten Hag, the previous Manchester United manager, the benefit of the doubt. Utterly clueless. He said that Ruben Amorim, the new manager, has done a remarkably good job. I think we all know as football fans that Ruben Amorim has a very difficult job on his hands, but the one thing you can't describe it as is remarkably good. He's trying his best. Results aren't great. In fact, they're very, very negative. But it was good to see Sir Jim Ratcliffe say something positive about the new manager and give him some support, so I'll give him credit for that. I think the major comments that people have taken from the interviews were the ones regarding players. He mentioned a number of Manchester United signings and said they were either not good enough or overpriced, and also referred to the fact that they were overpaid. So that's a negative for me, given that Manchester United have a huge game on Thursday night against Real Sociedad. The timing of these interviews is horrific, and the PR around Manchester United, I honestly don't know why they would allow him to do that and allow those comments to go out before a big game. Gary Neville stuck it to him on the former players' charity. My God, £40,000 a year taken away from former players from the 60s and 70s. Gary Neville alluded to the fact it wasn't some of the more wealthy Manchester United former players. He said, why haven't you just put a couple of players up for a charity evening, a Q&A, you know, charge £40 a ticket to raise the £40,000 a year? So Jim Ratcliffe said, well, no one suggested that. He looked like a moron at that stage, or he looked utterly cruel and heartless. You decide. And there was much said about the debt, and I'll end on this, the debt that Manchester United had. Not too much was said about the Glazers in any of the interviews that I've seen. There was reference to some of the poor previous decisions that have been taken, and Gary Neville tried to press him on the fact, well, that was under the leadership of the Glazers and their ownership. And what he said was, he thinks he gave them the previous management structures. The Glazers had given them a little bit too much rope. He also said that United would run out of money by the end of 2025 if things had gone the same, and that people should be sure that the club will be one of the most profitable, if not the most profitable football club within 3 or 4 years, and they will also challenge for a Premier League title within 4 or 5 years, given the cuts that Sir Jim Ratcliffe has made. So there you go. If you haven't seen it, you have a good indication of what was said. And for me as a Manchester United fan, some of the things are positive. Transparency, fantastic. We didn't hear anything from the Glazers for a long, long time. They don't speak. And it was good to have someone involved at a high level at the football club telling us what their thinking is. But for me, the big negative is the timing. This should have been done at the end of the season, without the pressure that the players currently are under and the manager is currently under. So for me, that was a big negative. What did you guys think? Darren, I'll start with you because you're the big journalist in the room. What did you think?
I don't know about that. I think you're right. I think it was a little bit of a PR disaster. There's a lot that's been said about, well, at least he's spoken. But when you're the manager of the biggest club, one of the biggest clubs in the world, your messaging has to be on point in every area. It was a misstep to say that, to kind of infer that the women's side of things wasn't as important as the men's. You're one of the biggest clubs in the country. You're one of the clubs that sets the tone, and this, bear in mind, from a man who, it's well documented, appeared, and I say appeared, he might say that's not the case, but he appeared not to know what the captain of the women's team did, who she was. Now, there was a part where he said that he got rid of staff because the fans only care about the players. Well, you only have to look at the turnout for a much loved member of staff who passed away earlier this season to understand just how much players past and present care about the people that the public don't get to see, but those people who work tirelessly hard to make life day to day better for the players, to understand that it isn't binary. You can't just separate the staff from the players. And he's used one extreme example, the body language therapist, I think, he claimed on a lot of money as representative of the club. And I don't think that was particularly fair, because there are a lot of people who do a lot of hard work at Manchester United who were not getting the credit he deserves from a statement like that. So many other things to go for. I know the boys want to get a chance, from the idea that, I don't know, he's prepared to defend. And Gary does incredibly well to really push him on the idea that he doesn't want to feel that he as a player can eat well, but the staff who do so much for him, there's an inequality there in the way that they're eating. It's just completely unfair, and he's right to raise that. To name the players currently in the team, one of whom was Onana, another one was Højlund. I mean, they're your investments. You're supposed to do everything to get the best out of your investments. To name those players when they are first team players going out on Thursday to try to keep your club in the second tier European competition, effectively save your season. Honestly, I'm mystified by that. There are so many aspects. The biggest one is the question, really. And while we are recording this pod, the news is breaking that of the regeneration project that around Manchester United and the stadium and the surrounding area, who's paying for it? Ticket prices are going up. You're pleading poverty. If that's the case, who is paying for it? Because it should not be the case that either fans or the taxpayer should be paying for a new stadium and the regeneration of the surrounding area for a billionaire. It should not be the case. So who is paying for it? Well, I'm sure we'll get answers as the day wears on.
Well, just on that point, he did say,
very, very key question.
Yeah, he did say when asked about that, he said that he thinks we can finance the stadium, which for me as a fan, hearing all the sums that he mentioned and the huge debt, the interest rates that Manchester United face and the payback stuff is essentially taking on more debt. You're going to borrow the money from somewhere. Other clubs have done that. and that has held their
Who's going
spending
to pay
back.
that debt, Hugh? Who's going to pay
Yeah,
that
this
debt?
is it. It immediately passes on to the fans in some way.
But this is what I didn't understand. You know, all that conversation about debt, and the debt is obviously extreme, particularly because of the club that it is. But then you're talking about a new stadium. Then you're talking about other things that actually require a lot of money. I didn't watch it in total because obviously I was traveling last night. But a couple of questions. I don't want to throw any curveballs. Isn't the person that always is the one that makes the cuts always the one that is the one that people hate? Is it not the fact that cuts need to be made because of the extravagant spending of this football club over many years and the extravagant wages of this football club over many years? I won't go into players. I think that's an absolute car crash. You know, and I didn't know that he mentioned those players. And to be honest with you, why would those players turn up on Thursday if that's the way the owner is speaking about them? You know, he obviously doesn't want them at the club. He obviously, you know, they're the ones that probably will be the first. You know, can you get them out of my club? Can you get them off the hit list? And they haven't been performing great. But to name a couple of players against the backlash of the whole squad not performing to the levels that it should is just unbelievable. But sorry, I've dragged on. Just go back to that. Isn't he the guy, the fall guy for a lot of the stuff that has gone on already? And he's the one that is trying to make it work. I agree that some of the ways they're doing it is it's unbelievable. But is he or is he not? That's just a question
Well,
from me.
can I just jump in there? Because the problem is the expenditure on the players and the manager. The closing the canteen and axing the lunches. The experts suggest that that's going to save the club around £1 million a year. Now, Casemiro earns more than that in a month. So the idea that they are making any kind of important move by doing that, the experts, the people who know more than us, suggest that's not the case. The other thing is that he admits keeping Ten Hag, and in doing so spending £200 million on new players for him, and when he shouldn't have done. So again, that's on him. When you think about bringing in Amorim, all of the reasons why he says that Amorim should be given time are the reasons why he shouldn't have brought Amorim in at that point in the first place. So again, that's his judgment. So when you say, is he the fall guy? It's not so much the fall guy. You took over a club in a difficult moment because you saw the investment potential. And it looks to me, and he admits it himself, he admits there are certain areas that he didn't realize the size and the scale of what he was dealing with. Again, that's on him.
Poor.
I don't think it's unfair for him. And it's the reason why he's done those interviews, because he knows that everybody is looking to him as the face of a body that has come in purporting to be the saviors of the club and the ones who can turn it around. And actually, it's got worse.
That's the point, Troy. He was seen as this person who was going to save Manchester United. He then lost the club tens of millions of pounds. The decision to keep Eric Ten Hag, give him a new contract, money down the drain. Dan Ashworth, gardening leave, £4.1 million for his 5 months at the club, money down the drain. The signings that were made last summer, people can say that they've done okay, but they did not advance Manchester United, and essentially they are a waste of money, because if they want to get where they want to get to, none of those players, maybe one or two, but I don't see them as being key players in the future for Man United. They got rid of Deadwood, they brought more Deadwood in. But the thing that grates Manchester United fans, I think, the most is this idea that we have to make these savings on the ex-players charity, and we have to make people redundant. Because then we'll be able to spend on a player. That's essentially what he said last night.
Yeah.
And we know that that's not what's happening. We know the money is going to service a massive debt that was placed on the club by the Glazer family. And he's talking to fans like they're stupid. You know, the recruitment this summer for Manchester United, the strategy has to be there. Last year it wasn't. The complacency was unbelievable. The overhaul should have started then. Get a new manager in, get a new squad, and have a serious strategy about your recruitment. Bringing in people like De Ligt, that's no strategy. It's just a name that you could get. Was he ever going to truly do anything other than be a squad player? As far as I'm concerned, his output, Matthias de Ligt, and I don't want to criticise him as an individual player, but is the same as Johnny Evans' output was, who came in as a free transfer instead of retiring. He was like, all right, I'll give it another couple of seasons. You know, you don't need to go and spend £40 million on de Ligt. Man United never get free signings anyway. Their work in the market is horrific. And Christopher Vivell, the new director of recruitment, if it doesn't go brilliantly well this summer, any kind of goodwill towards Ratcliffe and Ineos Sport, if there is any left, will have completely gone.
Jordan, let me bring you in. First of all, what were your thoughts on the interview?
Well,
He loves it. He loves it.
I'm absolutely, I'm like a pig in you know what. This is absolutely, I've dreamt about this for so long. I want United down. This is amazing. And hearing Hugh 17 foul mouth, passionate rants in the WhatsApp group last night. Absolute. I could have replayed that like till I fell asleep. Honestly, it was beautiful. Loved it. The passion. He's a fan, so of course it means a lot to him. Look, I think as Troy was saying earlier on, Ineos have come in. Money's been spent on things that are just ridiculous, right? And they've come in to try and cut things and get things back financially in shape. That's never going to go down particularly well. I disagree with I think you, Darren, and maybe yourself, Hugh, and maybe all three of you actually, in regards to the dinners. It was the one thing he said that I did agree. He made the point that 95% of people in this country, you don't get a free meal at work. I never understood the whole big thing around it. Now, Darren's point is valid in the sense that that isn't going to really touch the sides in terms of the cost you need to save. I get that. But that's separate to the point of why are we paying for people's lunches? Gary Neville was saying, as a player, I wouldn't feel comfortable if I'm having dinner and it's free and the staff had to pay for it. Well, that's every office in the country. Why does the staff? If you can give your staff a free meal, great. But the idea that they're entitled to a free lunch and they should, that for me was bizarre. I find the parallels really interesting between Ineos and the Labour government because they've both come in to real massive S shows, all right? Had to make some very difficult decisions and they ain't going well.
He's loving it.
Neither's going well. I mean, at least Sir Keir Starmer's kind of got his team, Labour voters, if you like, still on side. Whereas Ineos, they're rapidly losing their team, the fans, very, very quickly. Look, they're miles off being a competitive team, but they have to get their house in order. It's going to be a very interesting summer for a lot of clubs this season, including mine. But for United in particular, because a lot of that talk that he's giving, there was no detail as to how they're going to actually get back to the top. It was just, we have aspirations, we've got to make some money back. And maybe you don't do that in a public interview. I don't know. But my banter and joy of seeing what I'm seeing aside, this is the man that's come in having to make some very tough decisions. But the big ones he's got wrong. The big ones so far, the signings, Ten Hag, what's my man's name who came in and then got sacked? Ashworth. You know, these are billionaire business people, and they're getting the big ones wrong. And I can't help but wonder, and this is maybe a question to you, Hugh, is it because they don't have people that understand football to mix with those that understand business? Is there an arrogance? They've come in the building and they're like, well, we've made billions, we've done really well. But when I look at their track record in other sports teams, all their other sports teams are bombing, or at best they're doing okay. It's not looking good.
They did well in cycling, obviously, but remember they took over a team that was already successful. In the shape of
I would suggest that
they did.
Team
Sky were
deteriorating. The relationship with Sir Ben Ainsley isn't great. They didn't make a success of Nice. I would argue with that, and I'd also suggest there are football people at the club.
But the cycling, he was saying the cycling team.
My point was the only success was in cycling, but they took over a team in cycling that was already right at the top. That was the only point I was making.
I mean, in general terms, there are football people there. We know Dan Ashworth's track record. Christophe Vivell, as you were saying, has been at Chelsea before. There are football people in the business. Jason Wilcox, Omar Barada. There are football people there.
Darren, the reason I wanted to come in on that point actually is I said this at the time when all of these big figures were hired. Omar Barada's doing great at Manchester City. Jason Wilcox was great at City. He's now at Southampton. We're bringing him in. Dan Ashworth's going to come. My first point was people are like, we're going to be back. Man United are going to be back. Anyone that's worked in business knows this, and I'm sure Sir Jim Ratcliffe does as well. All of these people were the prominent figure in the areas they were working in, where they were working in. You've brought them all together as if they're the Power Rangers, and it's like, well, who's in charge? Whose voice is the most important in the room? Whose experience do we lean on the most? Because in all of their environments, they would have been that person. And there was always going to be, we don't even know if they like each other. They're going to be working in a high pressure environment. And he said yesterday, Dan Ashworth had to leave. He didn't want to go into the details, but he said chemistry. Chemistry was the reason that Dan Ashworth had to leave, and he had to make that decision. So what was the advanced planning for all of these people coming in? I don't know.
So sorry, who thought Man United were going to be back?
No, that was the fans. That was the fans saying,
Okay.
we've made all these great appointments.
I'm not sure everyone outside of Manchester thought that, because what we were watching was exactly where they are now.
Just as we're talking, just some breaking news. I don't know.
Hammer him sacked.
No. Man United to leave Old Trafford as Sir Jim Ratcliffe announced his plans for 100,000 seats of ground. I mean, we kind of knew that was coming. That's just broken. Anyway, sorry,
but how much is it going to cost? And it alludes to Darren's question at the beginning, where who's going to be paying for it? Because for a club that's losing the money that they are losing, that are not even guaranteed European football next season. They're not guaranteed, so they have to go some, and they have to break the cycle of poor performances to even try and get European football. Where's that money coming from? Where's the expenditure coming from?
I think it's a really, really important question, because there is a disconnect between United's big ambitions and the soul of the club that binds it enough to create a momentum that sends the club up the table. And it's almost like putting bricks on a wall without the cement, without mixing the cement to hold it together. And to Hugh's point, you can bring all of those people together, but if the leadership and the culture isn't right, then all you've got is individuals with expertise. If they don't feel they're being listened to, if their ideas aren't put into practice effectively enough, then you get the mishmash. There's so much going on with Manchester United. We will come back to that. It's a developing story, as you all know anyway. And over the next few days, they'll be playing in the in the Europa League against against Sociedad, and their season basically rests on whether they go through that match. So, depending on what the result is, we'll revisit Manchester United next week. In the meantime, I want to tell you about a conversation I had with Hugh on WhatsApp on Friday night. It's around Nottingham Forest. They're in the FA Cup, as you know, but they're also in the Champions League as well. And I asked you the question. Well, I asked the group the question. If Forest could choose between being guaranteed the FA Cup right now or guaranteed a place in the Champions League right now, which of the two would they choose? And Hugh said the FA Cup. He said it was a silly question. Of course they would. Football is all about winning. I agree with that. But I disagreed, because I feel that they would choose the Champions League because of what it gives them as a club in terms of the huge revenues, because of being able to play in the elite European competition for the first time in 40 years, because of the players that they'd be able to attract that would take the club to another level. There are lots of different reasons. And you only have to look at Aston Villa for the experience that fan base are having going to stadiums, again, that they would not have been to for the last 30, 40 years in the elite European competition. So I think they would choose the Champions League. What do you think? Hugh, we'll go to you first, then we'll take the guys' points of view.
I mean, obviously, the ultimate answer comes from the fans themselves. So if you're a Forest or Villa fan, I guess, do let us know whether winning the FA Cup or just being in the Champions League is more special to you. But for me, you can't replace a trophy, especially if you're a smaller club. I know Forest is a big football club, but obviously they're not a titan in the way that we see some of the clubs that go into the Champions League regularly. For me, it's about the memory of the day. Some people tell me that you get 8 days when you get into the Champions League. 8 days that last a lifetime, because playing against, I don't know, Slovan Bratislava is obviously more important than winning the FA Cup. I don't know. As far as I can see it, that day, especially if you're a Nottingham Forest fan, of lifting a major domestic trophy, that day at Wembley, I think those memories will last a lifetime. And I can only say it to this: when I go to Aston Villa, they still play the videos of winning the European Cup, not because they were in it that year, but because they won it that year. Lifting the trophy is still the most significant thing they've done, lifting it. And all the other clubs I go to, I see videos of, whenever they have lifted a trophy, of players lifting trophies. I never see videos and pictures of that time we played in a competition, unless you're at Spurs. And
Oh,
you know,
gosh. Wow.
it's true.
Oh,
It's true.
wow.
Spurs do play those videos. What can I say? But
It's taking strays.
Yeah, but it's
anyway,
that point.
That's not even a
Anyway,
stray.
no, let's
That's
move
not
on.
even-
Let's move on.
it's a fact.
It's a stray.
It's a fact. It's a fact. But the reality is, if you're a team like Nottingham Forest, winning the FA Cup will be spoken about in 40 years, 50 years' time. People will always say, "Oh, do you remember the cup winning team of this player was in the cup winning team of whenever it was, 1965?" And those players still walk into the football club like heroes. With respect, just qualifying for the Champions League is not a trophy, and it will not be spoken about in 50 years' time. I'm sorry, it won't.
Jordan?
I'm with you. If just to be a bit of a pedant, the question should be if Forest had to choose, because people will respond by saying, "Well, why have they got to choose? They can have both, right?" So if they had to choose between FA Cup and Champions League football next year, for me, it's a trophy. I think it kind of goes to something that I've a lot of arguments with Arsenal fans, where I'm in the minority of people that actually puts style of play and enjoyment of the football I'm watching on par with trophies. Most people, it's trophies over everything. I'm not of that mindset, right? So if you offered me 38 1-0 wins over a season, I personally would decline that, because I value what I'm watching.
Isn't that devaluing a 1-0 win? A 1-0 win can come in many, many different ways.
It can, but not 38. I'm not going to the
George
Emirates
Graham,
and pay
you
more
went through
money.
the George Graham era, didn't you?
No, I did. But if you offer me the George Graham era or the Arsene Wenger era, I know what I'm taking. So the point I'm making is that I think you used the word moments and memories. They're very, very important. Most teams don't win trophies. Only a handful of teams win trophies. Unless you're a City fan, a Liverpool fan, a Chelsea fan, a United fan, even Arsenal, outside of
Leicester
those
City.
5 teams, 2 in how many years, Troy?
Doesn't matter.
No, but I'm talking regular winning trophy teams. Most
And you
fans
mentioned
don't
Arsenal
win
in that.
trophies. Shut up, you. Most fans don't win win trophies. Yeah, says the Spurs fan. This is incredible, Seeds.
I'm still taking shrapnel out of my body after what you said.
I think most football fans do not get the chance to see their captain, their team, lift the trophy. So if you're not in the Forest, let's be honest, they've been in the lower leagues for the last 25 years. If they get a chance to win an FA Cup, for me, I think it is a no-brainer. Now, if you're a City, you probably prefer to be in the Champions League next season ahead of winning the FA Cup. So it's club dependent. But for Forest, even Villa, I'm sorry, if you don't want those memories and those moments, I don't get why you're in football.
Troy?
Go on, Darren. Oh, okay, go on, Troy.
Now, go on. Finish what you're saying here.
No.
I want to get everyone's opinion first before we go back to Hugh.
Yeah, before we get the king.
Listen, I can understand it both ways. Obviously, the amount of money that the chairman has spent to get Nottingham Forest to where they are, the only benefit to that money is being in the Champions League. Remember, we're in a different Champions League phase now. It's not just 4 games and go out. You're playing incredible games. You're in the kind of tournament, and you've only got to get above the bottom 7, is it, to then extend that as well potentially. And Forest have a history. You know, and I think they would like to kind of revisit those times again with this team. People might look at this team and think, well, you know, they're not Champions League worthy. But you can't say that, because they performed absolutely outstandingly well this season, again and again and again. I get the lifting of a trophy. So this is me sitting on the fence, because that one day, the enormity of that one day, walking up those steps and lifting that trophy is amazing. But there's no guarantees in that. There's no guarantees. You don't know who they're going to play. There's no guarantees of them coming out on top.
No,
I'm
but
going to
sorry,
swing to the
Troy. I think the premise is you can guarantee. So if you
can
if you were
guarantee.
if you were God or whatever, and you said, I'm guaranteeing you an FA Cup trophy, or I'm guaranteeing you 3rd in the league.
I'm going Champions League.
Wow.
I'm staying Champions League, because I think, like I said, the tournament is increasing more and more and more. And I think for a side like Nottingham Forest to be in the Champions League again and to compete against those teams, we've seen some wonderful stories. I don't like the makeup of the Champions League. I've got to be honest. I don't like the makeup of it this year. But we've seen some incredible stories in the Champions League this year. You know, clubs who probably would never believe that they could get advanced to the next stage have done it. They've performed well in this new format, whilst established clubs haven't performed well and have struggled, and we've seen some of the big names go out. I just think the enormity of all those Champions League nights at the City Ground, people won't forget that. I mean, when you say people won't forget lifting a trophy, people won't forget. Nottingham Forest fans, remember, it doesn't matter to us. It's not us. It's not about us.
What do you
It's
remember
about
more?
the history and the enormity
What do
of
you
that
remember
club
more?
and that fan base, and then being in the Champions League. The music, I mean, the
What
music,
do you remember
the
more,
state.
Troy?
Wait. The music and everything that about those. Remember, it's not a one night hit. It's not a one night hit. So actually, they're remembering all the times that they're traveling abroad. Who knows who they might meet in that competition? And for me, it just overall, I get the winning of a trophy, and like you said, Jordan, you know, they could do both, and if they do both, it's an incredible season. But I'm leaning towards the Champions League.
Troy, sorry, just before you come in, Hugh, Troy, you said they remember those nights. Would you remember a night with Real Madrid coming to the City Ground more than winning the FA Cup final at Wembley?
Yes.
You think a memory of playing
Real
Real
Madrid.
Madrid, that's a
Who would
bigger,
have thought that
long-standing memory than winning the FA Cup?
Who would have thought that Real Madrid would be at the City Ground with all those names, all those players that have won the Champions League, the enormity, the status of the football club, the manager, the world-class players that they have, to have the opportunity to see those players.
How's that memory if you lose
it's not
5-0?
a big.
How's that memory if you lose 5-0?
It's still a memory, Jordan.
More than winning the FA Cup.
Now you're creating a story. What about if they beat them 2-1? What if they win 2-1?
No, but I'm guaranteeing you a win. Sorry, Hugh. I'm guaranteeing you an FA Cup final win versus hosting Madrid. You might lose that game 5-0.
Listen. Hold on.
Against Real Madrid.
Listen. We don't have to do it, guys.
Win of Real Madrid against the FA Cup win. I'm taking Real Madrid all day long.
We don't have to do this hypothetically, my guys. We don't have to ask what if. Do you know why? There's a case and point. There is a team in England who not only got to the Champions League regularly, not only played and beat big football teams like Inter Milan in the San Siro, my friends. Okay? There is a football team that got to a Champions League final.
Beat Bayern
the
Munich.
Memories, season after season after season in the top tier of European elite football. Memories after memories. Semi-final comeback to end all comebacks. Didn't win a trophy. Tottenham Hotspur. Tottenham Hotspur. Now I'm going to ask you a direct question, Troy. Would you swap all of those memories you had in the Champions League? Would you swap them for an FA Cup trophy?
What makes me laugh is that because of the way that
Yes
you're
or
on
Answer
this
the
no?
rant,
question. Answer the
way on
question,
the
Troy.
and shush your noise, you. Because you're on this rant, and obviously you're hurting because of the nature of your football club and the top to bottom
You ain't got the answer,
absolute
Sway. You ain't got the answer, Sway.
lunacy.
You ain't got the answer, Sway.
Sorry, what was the question?
Would you swap all of those years in the Champions League for an FA Cup win?
What do you mean all of those years in the Champions League? All of what years in the Champions League?
Bro, you were in the Champions League for a long time. How many years in the last decade you been in the Champions League? 6?
I don't even know. I don't even equate
Yeah,
it.
you lost count.
Is
You
it
lost
6?
count.
Is it
You lost
6?
count. I'm
Is it
guessing.
6?
I'm guessing there were quite a few Europa campaigns in there as well. But
I would have taken the victory against Liverpool.
when was that?
I would have taken a victory against Liverpool. So
Okay.
we have to talk.
But-
I would have taken a victory against Liverpool. But look, considering the length of time that Spurs haven't won a trophy, to see them win a trophy again would be, and I don't think it's going to happen very soon, but would be nice.
When
Would
did
be
Forest
nice.
last win a trophy?
But we've done the Champions League as well.
And the interesting thing is that it's a
Weak.
fair point to raise the case of Tottenham. But that first season when they got back into the elite European competition, I think it was 2010.
Amazing season, by the way.
When
Amazing
Crouch
season.
scored the winning goal at Manchester City to get them in there. That meant so much because suddenly they were in with the big boys. And if you've heard Marinakis speak, if you know what he's all about being in with the big boys. Now, I agree with you that football is about winning silverware. There's no arguments from any of us, or I would imagine not from anyone else watching as well. But I think that the modern generation of footballer, um, and certainly the younger generation, they want to see their team in action against the very best. The traditionalists among us, we believe football is for winning, but the younger generations, they think it's about experiences and going to the stadia that they normally see on TV that they otherwise wouldn't ever get a chance to go to. So would they take seeing Mbappe and Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo over
Absolutely.
winning the FA Cup? I think a
Absolutely.
lot of them would. And I think we're
No.
deluding ourselves to believe that
I'm
they
telling
wouldn't.
you, they would.
No. Listen.
You can't be
Don't-
dismissive like that, Hugh.
No.
You can't
Let
be
me
dismissive like that.
let me quantify the point. I think we are being almost disrespectful to young players. That they see the world differently. These
You mean
footballers.
young people? You mean young people?
No, I'm talking about the players. Young players. You don't believe that there's 18, 19, 20-year-olds in that team. That, of course, they value going to the Champions League. Of course, they value playing against these players. And that is their goal. But a lot of these players know that their chances of winning a trophy, if you play for Nottingham Forest, during your entire career are limited. And if you would tell them now, you get to show your kids, your grandkids, your FA Cup winners medal and have that trophy, your pictures with that trophy and your medal around your neck. Take that now or get into the Champions League for the next 5 years. A lot of people are taking that medal. A lot of people are taking that medal.
One more very quick point, because we do have to move on. We're running out of time. The other reason why I think the club would want to be in a Champions League is because if you go through that team, there's some terrific players and have been some terrific performances this season. Murillo, Milinkovic at the heart of defence, Morgan Gibbs-White in midfield. The two wingers who have been superb all season. Suppose they finish in the Europa League and a club comes along and says to Murillo, for example, we like you, or even
Got
Sells,
Champions League
we
football.
like you, we want to take you, you should be playing in the Champions League. If Forest have got Champions League football themselves, it's not as easy a decision as it would be if you're going to be playing in the Europa League, and that team, that probably isn't that much more.
But it's a different question.
Much bigger.
It is a different
But I'm
question.
saying it's all of the.
Can't believe you
it's
didn't
part
mention
of
Chris
the
Wood,
many
Darren.
things that come into the thinking of why they would prefer. Because as I said to you when we had our argument, the Champions League progresses you as a team. You can win an FA Cup, but then finish mid-table and not attract the players that you want, and actually have to break up that side because bigger clubs want to take away the key players that have done so well for you in the season. It's harder to do if you're in the Champions League.
Okay.
Okay. Let's move this one on. And just check your mute button as well, Jordan, to make sure that you are still
Well,
with
it
us.
was better that we cut him
Sorry,
off
sorry. You
anyway,
know
so
what?
I think
Yeah,
that
it
was
probably
done
was
on
better. Yeah,
purpose.
it was. It was. Sorry.
Look, I want to take you through another subject just before we go on, because the basketball legend LeBron James, he was a really angry man the other day, confronted the American broadcaster Stephen A. Smith at the weekend after Stephen criticized LeBron's son, Bronnie. There's a longer version of this, but you guys wanted to chop it up on the show. So I'm going to start with you, Troy. As a father of a sportsman, how hard is it to see a critic having a go at your son? And would you step in like LeBron did?
It's incredibly difficult. It could happen on a weekly basis. It could happen on a, at any stage, at any time. And you think about it as well. Listen, particularly from where I'm coming from, it's coming from a fellow professional. Normally, it's coming from someone that would have played the game, that would have understood the impact of words, language, but also they're there to critique the game. And if you know there is a point to pick out that they do against my son's performances, you kind of you got to accept it. You have to accept it as part and parcel of the game. I never forget the Paul Merson, who kind of stated that Andros should be nowhere near the squad, the England squad. And he stated at a time when Andros wasn't playing well for Spurs. He wasn't. There were issues at Spurs, and he wasn't performing to the best of his ability. But he had always done well for the national squad, and Roy Hodgson had always kept him in because of how well he'd done. So Merson, I don't know if it was on Soccer Saturday or what else, I was biting. Honestly, my teeth must have grinded down quite a lot at that stage, because I didn't think it was called for. I didn't think it was. It almost seemed like Merson picking on a Tottenham player because he could, because of who he represented. Andros goes out, they play Italy away. He comes on as a sub with Ross Barkley for 30 minutes, transforms the game, scores an unbelievable goal past Buffon. I've got to be honest, my neighbours right down the bottom of the road would have probably heard, I wasn't in Italy that night, would have heard me screaming and shouting. One, just because of my son scored a goal for his country again. And two, there was a little bit of, there's going to be some comeback now, and Andros tweeted, I got the tweet up today. Andros tweeted, "Not bad for a player that should be nowhere near the squad." And added Paul Merson, which he doesn't normally do things like that, but he did it. And I'm sure I did. I know I got involved on Twitter with just one comment. You shouldn't, but
Did you, Troy? Did you, Troy?
yeah, I got involved. And you know what was interesting for me was that I didn't know Paul Merson up until then. Lo and behold, I don't know how many months later, I go to an event, Paul Merson's there. So I'm screwing still, but I'm also like professional enough in what I do, and respectful enough as a father. And you know what? That's not my space. Although he spoke about my son, it's not my space to go and challenge him. It's not my space to go and talk on behalf of. And Andros wouldn't want me to. Obviously I know my son well enough. But you know what? Merson seeked me out and apologized immediately. So he seeked me out, apologized, said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean blah." And you know what? It's kind of like, what can I say? It's no biggie. I didn't want the conversation. I don't want him to say, "Oh, I bumped into your dad," and whatever else, and blah, 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 because that is uncomfortable as well, And for a son, listen, Andros goes many places and people say, "Oh, I know your dad." Like, "Oh, your dad's this and that." Even that, I'd be interested to be in his shoes, because after you've heard it once or twice, it's almost like, all right, yeah, my dad, so what? Whatever, you
So,
know what I
Troy,
mean?
if you did what LeBron did, would
No, I
Andros
wouldn't
thank
have
you,
done.
or would he be annoyed with
I
you?
would not have done what LeBron. LeBron's big enough and experienced enough, and knows that criticism comes as part and parcel of being a professional athlete. I don't think that like seeking him out and whatever he said, I don't think is the right way to go about it. And remember, he's still playing. I'm not playing. I'm just a parent who is involved in football, but I don't think that was the right thing to do. And it raises more questions than answers, actually, for me.
Just very
Let- let-
quickly, if you did do it, I know you wouldn't, but if you did, what would Andros do? Would you be
I
banned from
haven't
his
got.
house for Sunday dinner?
So you just asked that question to run jokes, yeah? You literally just asked that question to run jokes. No, he would. I don't think he would be happy. I don't think he would be happy. It's simple as that. It's like he's big enough, he's old enough, he's experienced enough, he's played this game, you know, for a very, very long time. And he doesn't need me, his mum, his brothers and sisters to get
But
involved in something that is about him, you know?
Troy, the context though is Bronnie James, LeBron's son,
I know the context, yeah.
has just entered the league. So I know you're saying Andros. What I'm saying is, can you imagine if someone was saying that about Andros when he was 18, 19 years
Well,
old?
they were. That's what I said. Criticism is part and parcel of being an athlete. You know, it's part and parcel of people who also have never played the sport, but think they can tell you how to play the sport. And they think they can critique your performances in a way, even though they've never been in those high pressured situations. So whether Andros was playing in League One, as he did with Leyton Orient, Yeovil, or the Championship, the criticism is part and parcel because, it's that Tottenham lad. Do you know what I mean? It's the lad that's come down to lend us some of his time. Do you know what I mean? It's that lad who should be performing amazingly in every game that he plays. And so there would be, and there was criticism of his performances. But listen, I sit in the stands and hear people behind me. There was one particular game for Crystal Palace. They were away at Hull City. And this guy, it's almost like he turned up determined that Andros was his target. And I'm sitting there with my daughter, who was, I don't know, 7 years younger than what she is now. And we're having to listen to the abuse every time Andros touched the ball. And I can't even repeat that abuse. And that's from his own fans. We moved in the second half, but it actually was another Crystal Palace fan that challenged the guy, that said, you know, you're bang out of order, the language you're using, and this, that, and the other. There's a two-pronged thing for me, because obviously, so I get involved. I'm Troy Townsend for the organisation I used to work for, and then I'm Troy Townsend as the parent. Do you know what I mean? And that very quickly gets highlighted. And I just think, yes, we could turn around and say something, but there's no benefit for a parent. There's no, unless the language is extreme or of a racial nature, there is no benefit for a parent to challenge at that time in that way. They're spoiling your experience. I understand that. And you may say, you know what, can you quieten down a little bit? But maybe not highlight the fact that you're a parent. And I tell you what, just to finish while you guys come in, I remember Andros making his debut for Tottenham, scored in an FA Cup tie. The guy next to me was constantly saying to me, you seem really interested in that number 31. I said, yeah, he's a family friend, you know, he's just someone that, you know, I've known him since he was a young boy. And then Andros goes and scores. And obviously you can't contain your excitement then, or we jump up and down. And the guy said to me, he seems more than just a friend, that young man to you, you know? There's times like that, you know, but yeah, it's difficult for any parent. I understand that.
Can I just jump in before you comes? I know you got some strong thoughts.
Listen, no, I'm just saying that Palace fan at Hull is lucky that Troy had his daughter with him, because boy, could have gone down different, boy. Got lucky.
Potentially.
My thoughts, Darren, are that this for me is about respect and professionalism. Okay, for those who haven't seen the video, I mean, and LeBron gets a lot of hate. A lot of people I know don't like him for various reasons, and some fair, some unfair. I think I'm on the side of Stephen A. Smith on this one, because first of all, if they haven't seen the video, he's quite confrontational towards Stephen A. Smith. First of all, I thought it was a little bit aggressive the way he's approached him, and you can clearly see he's sticking it on him. Secondly, I don't follow the NBA as much as I used to, but by general consensus, Bronny's he's not playing well, and there's an element, there's a unspoken or even spoken narrative that he's not ready for the NBA. The other thing is, it's Stephen A. Smith's job to critique players, and he wasn't personal. I mean, some may say it's personal because he's talking about him, but I've seen Stephen A. Smith criticize other individuals. He's just saying it as he sees it. I didn't see a massive issue in this. Now, I'm not a parent. You know, you Troy and you Darren, you are, so I can't talk to how I would react if it was my son or my daughter, right? But I'd like to think I'd be like Troy, in that you have to separate yourself as a parent, you know, as yourself from someone that's kind of just a regular person that's seeing someone being critiqued. And the final thing I was saying, Hugh, I've got some thoughts on it. I know we'll come to it. I don't have a massive issue with nepotism, right? There's a lot of talk around Bronnie getting through because LeBron James' son. And if you agree with the fact that, he's not that good, or he's not ready, nepotism seems to be at play here. I personally don't have a massive issue with nepotism as long as two things are acknowledged. Two things. The first thing is acknowledge that you have got that particular job because of your auntie or your dad or your mum. Just acknowledge it. Don't lie and make out like you're here purely on merit. Just acknowledge it and just say, yep, I'm here because of my dad. I get it. And the second thing is just be good. So you can't change who your dad is. You can't change that. So if you get a bit of a head start, or you jump the queue because your dad is so and so, you can't change that. I'm not going to say no. Let me wait 3 more years because that's the right thing to do. No, if you get a jump, you get a jump. So if you're the beneficiary of nepotism, don't lie and say that it's not because of your dad. Just acknowledge it. People respect that. Yeah, I'm here because of my dad. It is what it is. But also be good. If you've Hugh jumped and you're not even good, that's where I have an issue with people who benefit
I think
from
that's harsh.
nepotism.
I think that's
At
harsh.
least be good.
I think it's
Go on, John.
harsh in a way when you say just be good. Like, it's a bit harsh. Like, it's a
No, it's
professional
not, because
industry.
if me and you're a journalist, Troy, and you get a promotion at the newspaper
Totally
that I'm
different.
working
Totally
at,
totally
but and
different.
it's because your dad runs the paper, but you're a rubbish
Totally, no,
journalist.
I get
I'm
that.
vexed.
I get that part of it. I understand that. But to say just be good in a professional, in an athletic environment, like, we all want to just be good, don't we? Like,
Some
I wish
aren't.
Andros had, he's probably on 300 odd and what professional appearances. I wish that every single one of them were better than good. I wish they were great. There were some definitely below par. There were some that were of a level. And then, like I said, another professional footballer questioned the fact that he was included in a national squad, although he never let the national squad down. So
No,
he
but,
had to
no, but
perform.
hang on. My point is that Andros didn't benefit from nepotism. I'm saying if you benefit from nepotism, you've got to make sure that you're bloody good, so you can say, "Yep, I'm at
Oh,
this
now it's
newspaper."
bloody good.
What, Troy? I'm at this newspaper in this role, yes, because daddy runs the paper, but I'm also as good as everybody else in this newsroom. The issue I have is if you're here because of daddy, but you're rubbish. So you're literally only here because of daddy, rather than you've been given a little bit of a head start. But I know Hugh has got some
All
thoughts,
right,
so I
all
don't
right,
want to take
yeah,
up all the
I
time.
understand that.
No, listen. I do have a problem with nepotism on a general scale. I don't know how nepotistic basketball is. So if everyone else is bringing their son in and every other coach is giving their nephew and their cousin an opportunity, and that's the world that you're in, then do it. That's for me. That I'm one of those. I think if you work in an environment where people are where nepotism is rife, don't apologize when you want to bring your son in or your cousin in or whatever. I don't think we should. As black people, I think generally we dislike nepotism because nepotism, I think, takes opportunities away from us that we feel that possibly we could have got. We won't go down the DEI role and whatnot, but I think that's a reality and has been a reality for black people over a long period of time, very long period of time, that they can't get opportunities, but others can because of who they know / are related to. What I would say on this is LeBron James has put his son in this position. Bronnie James is getting paid millions of dollars. He got drafted at number 55 in the NBA draft. And for anyone that watches college basketball, that was too high. His production in college was not good enough to warrant that opportunity. His dad said before the draft, if you want LeBron James, you need to draft Bronnie James. Because he said, I'm playing with my son. Wherever my son goes, I'm going to be there. He's used his influence within the Lakers organization to make sure his son has been drafted by them. That's for sure. So the reality is the player himself, Bronnie James, isn't good enough. And he's taken the opportunity away from someone else who is. People dream of being an LA Laker. That's one of the big franchises in American basketball. And that's a dream for a lot of kids. And he's got that because of who his dad is. That is the reality of the situation. So you have made your son a target by using your privilege to get him in that position. And if you don't care what anyone says, then use your position to put him in to give him that opportunity. And that's what he's done. But if you do that, you know criticism's going to come your son's way and it's going to come your way. If you don't care, you don't business, and you can ignore it, then fine. What I dislike is you pretending that the son doesn't deserve any criticism. Actually, Stephen A. Smith defended himself by saying his comments weren't about Bronny James; they were about LeBron James.
LeBron James.
And I don't know the exact comments that LeBron James was unhappy with. But what I would say is his son, he as a father, all this talk around what a father would do. As a father, you put a target on your son's back. That's what you did. Now, if you were happy for him to get all the criticism and all of the hate because he's got an opportunity to play with you at the Lakers and he's getting paid, then that was your choice. Nobody put Bronny James in that position but you as his dad. And I know a lot of fathers that would say, you have to earn your opportunities in this life, son. I can't give you them. A lot of fathers would say that. LeBron James hasn't said that. He hasn't said that. He's used his privilege to give his son an opportunity, and now he doesn't want people to talk about his son, in his words, unfairly. But it's probably just. What do you want? It's on you, LeBron. I don't know what you want people to say. You caused this.
And also, just quickly as well, there's a clip that's gone viral where when LeBron James first broke into, I think it was the Cleveland Cavaliers when he was young. There's an incident where somebody was criticizing LeBron James and his mother tried to defend him. And he said to the journalist, I'm forgetting the words he used, but basically, like, stay out of it. Like, I'm a big boy, yada, yada, yada. So, but you know what I mean? It's like, yo, it's fair game. Like, you're in the big boy leagues. Your son's got to take it. And I agree with you. You've put him in a position whereby he's got to take it. He's got to hold it. It wasn't nasty. As Troy said, the criticism wasn't racial. It wasn't derogatory. It wasn't disrespectful. He's just saying, this guy is not good enough to be where he is.
And that's something that I would never, during the whole of Andrus's career and as it was escalating up the leagues and on the international stage, I would never want to. Why would you want to do that for your own son? Why would you want to make life more difficult? Why would you want to add more pressure? Why would you want you to be the center of conversation? You know what I mean? Particularly if people are questioning it about ability. LeBron must see it himself. He must see himself.
Selfish.
What I would say is that I defy anybody watching this, and I have to admit I would, if I did what LeBron did for his son, and I think most people would, in terms of trying to open up a pathway for the son to follow, but making it clear to the son that there are going to be lots of eyes on you, so you can't get any favors. It happens a lot in football where managers who have sons in their team treat them even more harshly than other players to show that they're not showing favoritism towards them. But I would also, if I was LeBron, be saying to Bronny, they're going to come for you. You're going to have to rise above it. I'm going to have to rise above it. It's going to be difficult, but I want you to have the benefits of what I had. I don't know a father who would not want that for their son. So I get what you're saying in terms of he created this problem in inverted commas, but I think it's more LeBron's problem than Bronny's problem, because as a father, you would want to open those doors up for your son. And I don't think it's realistic to suggest that wouldn't be the case. You want the best for your son. You want the opportunities for your son. You want your son to have what you had if you had a good experience. And that's what he's trying to provide. On the flip side of that, I do agree, Stephen A. Smith is doing his job and he's entirely justified to be able to call it as he sees it. You just have to develop a thick skin if you're someone who's opened up a pathway for your son, knowing that actually he just doesn't have that top class quality that Stephen A. Smith is asking for. So you're just going to have to swallow it if Stephen A. Smith comes at you.
Troy, what would you do if me and Hugh was on TalkSport battering Andros?
I'm coming for you. I'll be outside the minute you finish. Outside the studio.
We said it's outside,
Let me in.
I'd be like, Darren, keep the engine running. This won't take long. Listen, that is it for today's show. We know you got thoughts because you.
Hold on. Before you end the show, I want a definitive answer, Troy. All those years in the Champions League or in FA Cup, which one?
Man United are speaking live now. Jim Ratcliffe and
Yeah.
so they've
Wrap it up,
announced
Darren. Wrap it up, Darren. Wrap it up,
There's
Darren.
so much going on. So much going
Another Tottenham bottle job.
Like I said, you let us have your thoughts last week. Keep them coming. You can catch us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. In the meantime, we are off to make sense of that Jim Ratcliffe interview. We'll see you soon.